So I want to make some progress because some progress is better than no progress. So let's start in at page 126. Stopping point for us tonight will be at 148. So finally, he sounded breathless above the background noise of the city bustle. Why haven't you answered any of my texts or phone calls? She didn't tell him that her mother hadn't passed along his messages since she hadn't responded to his calls and on her cell phone either. It's been crazy here. We got strangles and our riding horses have been quarantined. Strangles? What's that? It's a very complicated contagious bacterial disease that, well, it can be really serious, and I've been put in charge of making sure it doesn't spread and nursing the infected horses. Wow, sounds like you could use some help. Cassidy ignored the hint. Josh had been keen to visit her ranch for some time now, but she had her doubts on how well he would fit in. He never had been on a horse and knew nothing about the cattle business. She was afraid Corbin Jackson would have a field day with him. And her mother, well, the fact that she hadn't told Cassidy about any of Josh's calls pretty much demonstrated the sort of welcome she would give Josh if he came. I'm doing okay. What's new with you? I've got that second interview I've been dying to tell you. We set a date for next week. How about you? Have you heard anything yet? Not yet. She wouldn't put it past her mother not to tell her if she had, but she hadn't seen any calls from the firm on her recently called list. Page 126 and 127. Besides, she'd given her cell phone number and email as primary contact information. The home phone number was just for backup. Not to worry, Josh assured her. I'm sure you'll hear something soon. Oh, and you should check your marks. Mine were posted last night. He reeled off a list of marks that were all impressive. Good for you. Look, Josh, I've got to go. I'll call you later when I have time to talk, okay? She hurried to her computer and went online. In a few minutes, she was relieved to see her final marks were even better than Josh's. So why had he gotten the call while she was still waiting? Deciding it was too soon to worry, she changed and headed out to the barn when she was intercepted by J. Owen, one of their hired workers. We got another sick horse, the short, wiry wrangler told her. Chickweed. I just put him into the stall next to Finnegan. And that was page 128. Here's 129 and 130. The one person Cassie didn't expect to see in the barn examining the newest sick horse was Farley. She watched him unseen for a while. Despite his height and broad shoulders, Farley was light on his feet, and sure with his movements. If you could call a vet graceful, then Farley was graceful. A slight movement from Skye, as always in her shadow, betrayed her presence. Farley glanced up from the vial, and he was putting in his case. Looks like we have another one. Oh, no, but you sure got here fast. I didn't even have time to call you. Page 130, 131, 132. I was already on the property doing some preg testing in the cattle barn. Since a grove of pine trees separated the cattle barn from the house, that explained why she hadn't seen his truck. That was lucky for us. So how is the Chickweed doing? The sturdy quarter horse was her brother's Corb's favorite. They had him about 10 years. Hey there, Chickweed. She patted the horse as she walked around him, doing a quick visual exam. Chickweed was smart, sure-footed horse, terrific with cow sense. But she could tell right away by his posture and position of his neck and head that he wasn't feeling well. Is he running a fever? Afraid so, and he's definitely suffering some pain. See how swollen he is under his jaw? Farley placed her hand over the enlarged lymph nodes, and she nodded. Not only did she feel the evidence of strangles in the horse, but she also felt rough calluses of Farley's hands, and strength and warmth. She remembered what his hands felt like on her waist and then on her shoulder when they were dancing together 4 years ago. She never forgotten and never would. Did he ever think about the good part of that night? Or was it just her inexcusable behavior afterward? She glanced at his face and saw that he was looking at her, that dark gaze is always intense and inscrutable. Should I prepare some hot compresses, she asked. He blinked. Yes. The moment between them, if indeed it had been a moment, was over. Farley went to his vet truck to get some more antibiotics while she warmed up compresses for all 3 of her patients. Lucy was restless as Cassidy washed her dried up abscesses. When Cassidy offered the warm oat mush, she gobbled it up. She's definitely feeling better, Cassidy noticed. Finnegan, unfortunately, seemed to be worse. He only ate a few mouthfuls of mush and hardly reacted when she called out his name and tried to give him a little loving. This is odd, Cassidy said. His neck isn't as swollen as Lucy's was or Chickweed's is right now, yet all of them he seems the sickest. You have to remember he's older, Farley reminded her, and it is possible. What? Farley removed the latex gloves he'd been wearing and tossed them into the trash. There can be various complications from strangles. We'll have to keep a close eye on Finnegan. What sort of complications? What should I watch for? But Farley was frustratingly vague. He just let me know if anything changes, okay? He was at the doorway now. I should get back to those Excuse me. I should get back to those cows. You okay in here? She was, but she liked it better when he was here with her, which was odd considering how much he disliked her. I'm fine, she insisted. He hesitated before leaving. Heard anything about the job in Billings? Not yet, but I got the results from my finals, and they were good. Congratulations. Still no word from the accounting firm, though. Some of my fellow students have already been called. Maybe I won't be getting a second interview. Farley's gaze dropped to her boots and then returned to her eyes. He gave her a small smile, a shadow of the one she could remember from earlier days, and nodded. I'll bet you will. 133, 134. Farley pulled on a pair of OB coveralls and disinfected his boots before rejoining Corb in the cattle barn. It was breeding season, and Corb needed to know which of his cows were pregnant and which ones were not. It was messy, physical work that required Farley's full concentration. Corb's job was lining up the cows for examination and then sorting them into pens when they were done. No wonder we pay you the big bucks, Corb said as Farley unlocked the unusually large amount of fecal matter from one of the cows. Farley shrugged. He was used to this, and the hard work was good distraction from a woman who could mess up his mind without even trying. Seeing how much she cared about her horses was making it hard for him to keep up the distance he planned with her. He assumed that the part of her had calcified. Around about that time, she discovered how much fun she could have playing one guy off another. But now he knew it hadn't. She was soft-hearted as ever, which meant that it was just him and she had a problem with. Self-preservation required that he stopped noticing all the sweet womanly things about her, but he couldn't seem to stop himself. He loved the soft curve of her ear that was exposed when she pulled back her hair, that incredible green of her eyes, the way she drew in one brow when she was confused or disbelieving. The phone on his belt clip vibrated, reminding him that he still hadn't answered his last night's phone message from Amber. She was the woman he should be thinking about right now, so why wasn't he? He knew he owed her at least a phone call, but how was he supposed to pursue a relationship with one woman when he was all but the time thinking about another? He felt small, squishy sack of cow's uterus and something harder inside about the size of a baseball. She's pregnant. Great. Corb released the animal with another bread of the cow, and Farley moved on to the next one. If only women were as easy to understand as cows. He knew one thing for sure, his life would be a lot less complicated once Cassidy took that job and made a permanent move to Billings. Page 140, 141, 142, 43, and 44. For a moment she was tempted, then she shrugged. It's difficult for me to think about the future right now. Each day that passes without a call for that second interview just makes me realize how much I was counting on landing that job. You didn't look too worried a minute ago. She hesitated, then laughed. That's true. Thanks for suggesting we do this. Isn't it a beautiful day? I mean, look at the view of the square butte. She waved her hand around the mountain rising from the hills to their left. Doesn't it just take your breath away? I know what you mean. His voice sounded thoughtful, and she turned to him, trying to figure out his mood. He was looking at her, though, not at the mountain. Was he changing his mind about her? Forgiven me yet? She dared to ask. Thinking about it. Yeah, what else are you thinking about? You look so serious there for a moment. I was just wondering what made you choose accounting as your field of study. She had a feeling he pulled that question from out of his hat, but she answered anyway. Math was my best subject. The guidance counselor at the school suggested I study, and the program of the U of M was looking interesting. And you did enjoy it? She shrugged. The classes on accounting, statistics, management, and finance had come easy to her. I was good at it. Math and science were my best subjects, too. Did you ever consider something else, like, say, vet school? Mom mentioned that idea, she acted, but as you already seen, I'm too squeamish. Yet you have a way with animals. Your dog. Your horses. Yes, but I love them so much I can't stand to see them suffer. A vet had to have the ability to be rational and objective. She could never stand back dispassionately when an animal was hurting. I even had a hard time helping with branding. I know it's necessary that the calves don't hurt for long, but it always breaks my heart all the same. And here I thought you were so tough. Did you really? That was page 140, 141, 142, 43, and 44. I remember you jumping off the bluffs on the far side of the cold Coffee Lake. That's a 30-foot drop. Brock dared me. You were only 10 years old at the time. He shook his head, as if he still couldn't believe it, and scared to death, she confessed, but it was fun after that first time when it came to her own safety. She could be daring enough. It was suffering of others, particularly helpless animals, that got to her the most. They talked some more. Farley told her about going to university, then vet school. He talked about his parents and how they decided to move to Arizona when he turned 30. One thing I'll always be grateful for, my dad sent me down for a talk when I finished high school. He told me that while my grandfather and father had both been vets, I shouldn't feel pressured to follow in their footsteps. He told me I could do whatever I wanted with my life, and even though I had no doubt about choosing the veterinary field, I was always grateful for him making sure I knew I had a choice. Wow, Cassidy said, I couldn't imagine my mother having a talk like that with any of us kids. She wants you all to work at Coffee Creek. You noticed that too, huh? He laughed, and after a second, so did she. At one point, Cassidy noticed a movement in some brush about 20 yards in the distance. The long grass swished, and she thought a glimpse of gray. Was that a coyote? Yep, the females are nursing the young in the dens at this time of year, which means the males have been booted out and are feeling a little nastier than usual. They seem to be more around than usual. I was at Strauss Monahan's the other day, and he said they lost a couple of barn cats last week. They suspected a coyote was involved. Oh, those poor kitties. I heard the coyotes howling last night. I was safe in the barn, yet even so, it was kind of spooky. They won't bother us on the horses, Farley assured her. It was Farley who first noticed the time. We better head back. I should check in my office, and Liz will be having a fit. She likes to keep a tight rein on you, Cassidy said, remembering how protective the other woman had been on the phone, about quick to tell her that Farley was dating Amber Ellis. Too tight at times, but she's so darn good at what she does, I put up with it. He glanced around the landscape. It would be good to give the horses a drink. Is that the creek bed over there? Cassidy shielded her eyes and looked where he pointed, to a grassy bank and a large grove of shrubbery with some stunted pine trees as well. They gained quite a lot of elevation, and trees never grew as tall at this altitude. You're right. I think that we've actually ran up to the boundary of the Turner Ranch. That's Silver Creek over there. Perfect, Farley signaled Chickweed to move toward the creek, and Cassidy followed on Lucy. They dismounted by a clearing in the trees and let the horses be free to drink their fill. Okay, we've finally reached 147 and 148. I would read on, but I'm just not feeling with it tonight. I'm sorry, kids. At the harvest dance, was that some sort of game you were playing? Why are you bringing all that up again? I said I was sorry. That's fine. I'm just still wondering why you did it. That guy, did you ever see him again? No, it wasn't about him. I just felt over my head, that's all. Understanding shone in his eyes then. You were scared. She nodded. There are 9 years between us. It's a big age gap. Back then it was. She could hardly believe that she said that, as if to imply it wasn't a big age gap now. That she and Farley, well, it probably was just as well. If you hadn't pulled that stunt, I would have ended up kissing you goodnight, and God only knows what would have happened next. She swallowed. He hadn't kissed her then. 147, here comes 148. But she was pretty sure he was going to kiss her now, and she wanted him to. In fact, she wanted him so badly right now it seemed like if nothing else really signified. She could remember how it had felt to be in his arms, and she wanted that sensation again and more. She wanted him to kiss her the way a real man would kiss a real woman. As if he meant it. As if he was claiming her for all time. With that, I'm going to leave the book for more book review tomorrow. It's one of my longest book reviews, so you can already guess it's going to get a very good book rating. And I hope it makes you pick up the book for all the pages that I miss and make you read the book for you to really be like, wow, you can go through this and hold grudges, but in the end, who really wins if you don't forgive? Who really wins if you just are like hard-hearted towards that person? Only you can answer that question for yourself. Good night. See you again tomorrow. Hopefully.